Let's continue then on this topic. A historic day in democratic post-Apartheid South Africa was marked earlier this week when 2 judges were impeached in one day. Now, this has raised questions in some circles about whether our judges are beyond a reproach. Now, to understand the complex process involved in impeaching a judge, we now talk to Chris Oxtoby, a research consultant at Freedom Under Law. Thank you so much for your time this morning. So I'd like to first start and as briefly as you can, just explore, the origins of this particular, complaints and why the impeachment is so significant, particularly as it relates to Justice Hlophe.
So the origins are going back in Judge Hlophe's case to 2008. When a complaint was made that he had improperly tried to influence judges of the Constitutional Court to decide a case, and that case was a particularly politically sensitive and important one involving former President Jacob Zuma. And in the case of Judge Motata, the second impeachment, that was from some issues that arose after an accident he'd been involved in while driving under the influence. And there were 2 issues there, one that he had used racist language in the aftermath of the accident, and the other that he put forward a defense in his criminal trial that he knew was not true. Now, both these incidents date back many years, and the significance is that we've never actually seen this process run this far. It's the first time that we are going to see judges actually being removed from office. There's no precedent for it in South African history. So it's highly significant from a historical point of view. And it's also important because it shows that the judges are indeed not above reproach when their conduct falls short of the standards expected of it, that there will be consequences for that.
And I want us to talk then about, the process. As we know, of course, that Judge Hlophe has approached the Constitutional Court. Impeaching a judge, as you also say, is a rigorous and multifaceted process, I would imagine, that requires, evidence of misconduct on incapacity. How complex of a process is this, particularly in South Africa, and as you say, a very historic and unprecedented, development?
It is a complex process, and there's good reason for that, because you obviously don't want a situation where judges can be removed from office too easily. It's very important that their independence is protected. It's important that judges know that they are protected in making decisions that might be politically unpopular, that might not be popular with the general public, but are what the law requires them to make. So it's really important that they know that they are able to make those decisions without being kicked out of a job if those decisions are not popular. So it's extremely important that the process is rigorous, and our process is very rigorous indeed. It goes through several stages in the JSC, where first of all a determination gets made about whether or not the complaint, if it is proved, will rise to the level where impeachment can happen. Then a tribunal conducts a full inquiry where evidence is led, witnesses are called, judges are legally represented, and they can cross-examine witnesses. Then coming out of that process, the full Judicial Service Commission decides whether or not to approve the finding that tribunal makes. And only then does the matter come to Parliament for Parliament to vote on whether or not to remove them. So there are a lot of safeguards along the way. One of the major concerns about these processes is that they've taken so long because both judges have challenged different stages of the process in the courts. But what one certainly can't say at the end of all of this is that they haven't had a full opportunity to defend themselves against the complaints.
What are Justice Hlophe's chances with the Constitutional Court, and what are we then likely to see in terms of the process that unfolded in Parliament?
Good question. My personal opinion is I will be surprised if the court upholds the challenge, because the challenge seems to be based on drawing an analogy between the process used to remove judges and the process that was used to remove the previous public protector. So the argument is that Parliament doesn't have its own special rules for how to deal with the impeachment of judges, and that Parliament should be conducting its own fresh inquiry into the complaints effectively. And considering the extensive process that the complaints against judges go through before they get to Parliament, as I've set out, I don't think that analogy holds. I think the courts are highly unlikely to rule that process falls short of the standards required. But we will have to wait and see. One can never guarantee anything until the court's actually ruled on the matter. If the court does find in Judge President Hlophe's favour, then we would have to see what that would mean. It might send the matter back and say that the inquiry has to begin again at some point in the earlier process. So I think the most likely option, if the court finds in his favour, is that the process will restart at an earlier point, and then we'll be in for more delays and a longer process still. And in that case, obviously, the National Assembly vote would fall away, at least as far as Judge President Hlophe is concerned. But I do think that's unlikely.
Yeah, a quick final question. Of course, many questions have been raised then in as far as judicial accountability is concerned. I mean, we're also monitoring what is currently happening in the tribunal as it relates to the suspended Judge Makubele. Just talk to us a little bit about that and what these, two impeachment processes now mean for the fraternity.
So I think they're very important because they show that this process does or can lead to definite actual consequences. I think in the many delays in the Hlophe and Motata process, there were concerns that the system was simply not effective and was not working and was not going to hold them to account. Now that we've actually reached the point of Parliament voting for their removal, I think it's a very clear example that judges can be held accountable and that they need to be extra careful that their conduct does meet the ethical standards that it is required to by the law.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for your time and your analysis. Of course, that was Chris Oxtoby, a research consultant at Freedom Under Law.